want you to just burn one number into your brain: 50%. Now, what do you think this represents? It's not some efficiency metric or a failure rate. No. This number, it represents the most dangerous moments in the entire processing industry. Yep, you heard that right. Half, fully half, of all major safety disasters don't happen when things are just chugging along normally. They happen during startups, shutdowns, and these other weird, infrequent events. These are the moments of transition, and it's when a system is at its most fragile. So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll break down exactly why these transitions are so incredibly dangerous. Then we'll introduce the critical safeguard that's designed to stop disaster in its tracks. We're going to walk through the checklist itself. And then we're going to look at the devastating real-world consequences when this system fails and pull some crucial lessons from those tragedies. So what is it about these moments that makes them such a high-risk zone? Well, think about it. The system is basically in an unproven state. After you've had a shutdown or you've made some changes, you just can't assume everything is how it's supposed to be. Is a valve stuck in the wrong position? Is some critical sensor offline? Is that new piece of gear really integrated properly? Any one of those things could lead to a catastrophe. And look, this isn't some new revelation. It is a well-documented and, unfortunately, a tragically recurring pattern in process safety. The industry knows that the startup phase is where all the hidden gremlins tend to crawl out of the woodwork, often with explosive results. And that brings us to the solution. To fight back against this vulnerability, the industry came up with a really important safeguard: the Operational Readiness Review. You'll also hear it called a Pre-Startup Safety Review, or PSR for short. Just think of it as the final, disciplined line of defense standing between a safe startup and a potential disaster. So what is it, really? Well, it's a super-structured, systematic check. You get a team of experts, and they use this detailed checklist to do reviews of all the paperwork and, just as importantly, to physically walk the plant floor. They're there to confirm that everything was built or fixed correctly and that every single potential hazard has been dealt with before anything goes live. Honestly, the best analogy for this is a pilot's pre-flight check, right? No pilot would ever dream of taking off without methodically going through that checklist, no matter how many times they've flown that plane. An operational readiness review applies that exact same non-negotiable level of discipline to an entire industrial facility. It's that serious. Okay, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty. When exactly do you have to do one of these reviews, and what is the team actually checking for? The triggers for a review are crystal clear. This is not an optional nice-to-have. It is required after any big maintenance event, what they call a turnaround. It's required if you've made any major changes to the process. It's absolutely mandatory after you install new equipment. And, this one's key, it's also required if a plant has simply been sitting idle for a long time. And what's on the checklist? It's the whole shebang. Is all the physical equipment, the pipes, the valves lined up exactly right? Are the safety procedures current and correct? Critically, is every single employee properly trained on what to do? Is the emergency gear good to go? And, as we are about to see, is every last piece of key instrumentation, the gauges, the sensors, the alarms, is it all working perfectly? Now, this all sounds great on paper, right? Follow the list, stay safe. But what happens when this critical safeguard is ignored, or maybe it's just not done with enough care? The consequences, they're severe, and they serve as these powerful, tragic reminders of why this process exists in the first place. Take a look at this. This is the aftermath of the explosion at the BP Texas City refinery back in 2005. A huge vapor cloud ignited during a startup operation. The explosion that followed killed 15 workers and injured so many more. And when investigators dug into what went wrong, they found a laundry list of failures. Failures that a proper readiness review should have caught. Key instruments that were supposed to warn operators of the danger were known to be broken, but nobody fixed them before startup. Training for the startup was totally inadequate, and non-essential workers were still in the area when they should have been cleared out. Every single one of these is a direct failure of that readiness checklist. You'd think a disaster like that would be a lesson learned for everyone, right? Well, it wasn't an isolated incident. Just 3 years later, in 2008, a terrifyingly similar pattern of failure happened at the Bayer Crop Science facility in West Virginia. And again, the root cause was a complete breakdown in the pre-startup review process. In the Bayer case, the plant was restarting after a major upgrade to its control system, but For whatever reason, the standard readiness review wasn't applied to that new system. The equipment wasn't tested, operators weren't trained on how to use it, and the result was another deadly explosion. 2 employees were killed, teaching the same tragic lesson all over again. Skipping this check is gambling with people's lives. So, what are the big lessons we can pull from these disasters? How do you actually build a system that makes sure a readiness review is always dependable, always effective? Well, it really boils down to 4 key principles. First, you have to maintain a dependable practice. That means formal, consistent procedures every single time. Second, you conduct reviews whenever they are triggered. No exceptions, no excuses. Third, and this one is so important, you have to act on the results. If the review finds problems, you do not start up until they are fixed, period. And finally, you follow through. Every single issue that's identified has to be tracked until it's 100% resolved. See, at the end of the day, this is about so much more than just a piece of paper. The checklist is just a tool. The real safeguard is the culture behind it. It's a deep-seated commitment from everyone, from the person on the floor to the CEO, that says we will not go forward until we are absolutely certain it is safe. That right there is the cornerstone of a real safety culture. And that brings us to one last thought to chew on. We often see this review as the final hurdle to clear before we can get back to business. But maybe we should flip that thinking on its head. Is the readiness review really the end of the preparation process? Or is it the true beginning of a safe, successful, and uneventful operation?